Welcome back to Open Line tonight. We are talking about suicide prevention. If this is a topic that you have a comment about, a question about, now is the time to call. The number is on the screen, 615-737-PLUS. That is 7587. Let me introduce you to our panel again. Great panel tonight. Scott Ridgway from the Tennessee Suicide Prevention Network, Dr. Lewis with the Tennessee Department of Health, where she's a medical examiner, and also Joanne Purley with the Tennessee Suicide Prevention Network. Thank you all for being here once again. We were talking during the commercial break, and we're going to go back to the warning signs as promised, but I also want to talk about the stigma surrounding suicide. We're at this record number, so more people than ever, unfortunately, are committing suicide in our state and across the nation, but yet there's this heaviness of the stigma where people don't like to talk about it, right? Yeah, why is that?
Well, I think one, I do want to just recognize Mike, our earlier caller, and appreciate him for talking about his lived experience, because if more people like Mike talked about his lived experience, others would understand that he's not the only one that has that lived experience, because as we lose one person to suicide, there's estimate up to 12 to 25 people that attempt suicide. And you know, it's ironic because a lot of times folks will say, do people really use these phone numbers? Do they call or they text these crisis text line? You know, Tennessee, I was talking about being very progressive. I mean, the Tennessee Suicide Prevention Network would not be here today if it wasn't for the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. You know, first of all, the governor appoints my advisory council, and we've been through three governors, and we're getting ready for another governor, and I've been very blessed to have been the executive director. But the funding comes from the Department of Mental Health, and this last year, this last administration, Commissioner Varney and now Commissioner Williams have been very, very supportive. And the crisis line, the mobile crisis line, our 1-800-273-TALK line rolls into a lot of our mobile crisis. And so when you call that 1-800-273-TALK line, basically it's rolling into the mobile crisis lines to access those to come out and do an assessment, or you know, they may come and get you, and so we in Tennessee have a very robust crisis system that's in place. And so and you can go to our website at TSPN to find those resources, but it's very important that we utilize those. And as Joanne was talking about education, not only does the Tennessee Suicide Prevention Network provide that education in many different curriculums and so forth, but we do outreach. We're at the Strawberry Festival, from the Banana Festival. I mean, we're giving out literature. We're doing all kinds of outreach. But you know, while we're giving outreach, it's so important to make sure that we're giving out those resources. Sure. Making sure that people know that the Mental Health Co-op has a walk-in center, that you know, you don't have to go to the emergency room to be assessed. You can go to a walk-in center here locally, but there's other walk-in centers all across the state that you can go to. There's a detox center for adults that you can go to. There's a crisis stabilization unit, that everyone doesn't have to be hospitalized anymore. You can go to a walk-in and be assessed, and so by using those resources and by us giving those information, that's so important for folks to be able to know that. But the other thing too is that educating folks about postvention. Postvention is the aftermath. And so when we lose a student to suicide, or we lose someone that a factory or an organization, most recently I can think about, well, there's been several, there was the plant in Cookeville, where we were there to provide assistance for that group. And the gentleman in Memphis, where he caught himself on fire and it was posted on Facebook, we were able to provide assistance and so forth. And so being able to provide resources for those after someone dies by suicide is so important, but also for that lived experience. You know, there's programs and 12-step programs that are able to refer folks to be able to say, you're not the only one that has had a suicide attempt. In Memphis, there's the Suicide Anonymous support group, that part of the discharge plan at Lakeside Hospital is you're going to you're recommended to go to the Suicide Anonymous support group. And there's different other ways that we want other folks to know. And then working with the media about how to educate about reporting, that we don't want to glamorize or sensationalize, because we want to make sure that the 15-year-old that just lost his life to suicide, if we glamorize or sensationalize, we don't want to lose another 15-year-old thinking that they're going to get that attention.
Exactly.
So there's so much that goes on with the Tennessee Suicide Prevention Network, but reducing that stigma is a key issue of making sure that people understand that we die by suicide, that we don't commit suicide.
Talk about that distinction a little bit, because I think it's always been part of our jargon up until this point. They committed suicide.
Well, in the last 3 or 4 years on a national movement, it's going to take us some time to get,
Sure,
but on a national
does.
movement, the survivors have really tried to work to get folks to understand that you die by suicide just like you die by a car accident or you die by a heart attack. When you think about the word commit, automatically you think about, oh, well, you committed some type of act of crime, or then what about the word complete? Well, you complete like task, or you complete an assignment, and so someone's not completing suicide. So why not just use the terminology like everyone else does? We die by suicide just like we die by a car accident, and that will help us be able to let folks reduce the stigma associated with it. Because a lot of times when survivors really lose a family member to suicide, what happens is in small communities, they go into a grocery store, they sometimes are treated like the plague, because, and it's not that other people don't know what to say. And so instead of avoiding them, you say the same thing that you say when someone dies by a car accident. What can I do for you? What do we do best in the South? Can I bring you a dish?
Can I bring you a casserole? That's right.
Exactly. And so working on the stigma is so important.
Yeah, because people do. You touched on it perfectly. You're like, well, I'm not going to say anything. I don't want to say the wrong thing, right? Yeah. People are afraid of that. Let me jump to the phone lines real quick. We have Milton hanging on. Milton, thank you for being part of the show tonight.
Yes, thank you for taking my call.
Sure. Go ahead with your comment or question.
Okay, on CNN today, they had a professional there talking about teenage suicide, and she said today that the cell phone, because of the cell phone and the negative texts and the negative bullying that come across the phone now, that more teenagers in the last year have committed suicide nationwide than any other time ever before. I was shocked to hear that. I felt like I was out of touch with reality, except for the fact that I have a friend whose daughter missed curfew at 11 o'clock. He took her phone and she jumped. She fell to her knees begging, crying, pleading for him not to take the phone. And he did take it for a week, but I was just surprised of what effect that phone had on her. And then to listen today about the negative texts and the negative bullying that happened over a telephone or through the telephone from one teenager to another to many, and that they will attempt or commit suicide because of that negativity. Can you talk more about that?
Milton, you bring up a great point, because I think when all of us were in school, we didn't have these cell phones. Most times the bullying stopped when you left school at 3 o'clock. But kids now, just like Milton said, they're attached to these things, and the bullying comes straight through it. It never, ever, ever stops for a child. Yeah, and I mean, you can only take so much sometimes. I mean, they just get worn down. I mean, you understand it. Yeah. So parents need to be looking at that phone, right?
Yeah,
a big part of it.
Be aware of what your child is looking at on your phone, whether it's the Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, whatever it is. Just be aware what that is. Be aware who they're talking to, and also it's just being a part of their life. When you're having dinner, set the phone down. I don't know. I couldn't imagine when I was a kid having that constant connection.
Right.
I just couldn't.
It's so overwhelming.
Yeah,
those little developing minds. I mean, they still very much are.
I mean, just think as adults that we're always checking our phones for work or our email and just think about your socialization of, I mean, this whole thing about kids trying to change their image and their faces and their bodies to post to make sure that they get enough likes, or they get enough checks, or they get their pictures shared, or whatever it is.
Right.
Joanne's laughing because I don't know what I hear about some
Can't
of
keep
this.
up with it, Scott?
I can't, because they changed to something else. But
They do.
But it is serious for some kids that are depressed, and talking to some of the therapists, and there was a round table over at Vanderbilt where some of the therapists were having these discussions of their kids coming in telling their therapist about some of this kind of stuff. Trying to keep up with the other kids, and it's very concerning, and their parents don't know any of this.
Right. I want to move to the other end of the age spectrum, and one thing that I read in the notes that just really floored me was that the elderly age group, more than any other age group, has the highest number of suicides. Am I saying that correctly?
Highest rate.
Highest rate of suicides. Why?
Well, the rate is per 100,000. So when we look at the rate and we look at the population,
The shrinking population. Yeah.
And so that's we're getting ready to publish our status of the suicide report, and we're waiting on some numbers. So it is our best estimate that some of those, the reason why is probably because of the lethal means. But I'll have to get back with you probably on the next show with some of those the details.
Yeah.
But we're estimating that probably could be some of the answers.
But when I was doing autopsies before in my prior job, it would frequently be someone who had a terminal cancer diagnosis or chronic pain or just whatever. They're done.
Right.
You know?
Right. And I think it's important. I know I have a family member who is dealing with Alzheimer's, and even in the very early stages, the doctor told the caregiver, remove the guns from the house. And that's probably a very important tip that people need to hear when people have a life-threatening illness like that. Yeah.
I think it's so important that anytime there's any type of crisis in the home, is remove the guns. If not remove the guns, then I would encourage take the bullets out. The Tennessee Suicide, we have trigger locks. We would be more than happy to give you a trigger lock, and we can put the trigger lock, you can have the trigger lock put on the gun. A lot of folks have gun cases, put the guns in gun cases, because just even that small amount of trying to find the bullets, get the trigger lock off of the gun, putting the bullets in, and all of those small routines, you can reduce the impulsivity of someone taking their life by using firearms just with those
By having to go through those steps.
Those steps, and that's very important. We have a place in Chattanooga and Maryville that you can actually take your guns to, gun shops, and turn them over, and once the crisis is over, get those guns back. We are trying to, as a network, trying to work with other places in the state to be able to do that also with
That's
our
very
gun
interesting.
safety committee.
And
We're not asking to take guns
Take
away.
them.
No,
It's about gun safety.
Right.
It's gun safety is what it is.
Yeah.
Because, Tennessee, recreational use for
Sure.
guns.
It's big.
And so, but when your family is having crisis, removing those guns are a key component of gun safety.
Okay. Joanne, I know you had something to
it's
add.
that gun safety, it's that safe storage. And that can obviously apply to firearms, but as well as medication, substance abuse, substance misuse, whatever that might look like.
Yeah.
So an individual can stay safe in that crisis.
Good point. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. I know we have some callers on the line. We'll get to those right when we come back. Stay with us.